First story, by John Smith. It was a chilly autumn evening when I set out on a long drive from Cincinnati to Columbus. The weather forecast had promised a night of heavy rain, and as I left the city limits, the first few drops splattered on my windshield. Unperturbed, I continued my journey into the heartland of Ohio, a place I thought I knew like the back of my hand. As the rain intensified, I realized that my gas tank was running dangerously low. I spotted a fading sign for a gas station on the side of the road and decided to pull over. The place looked rundown, its neon sign flickering ominously in the storm. Reluctantly, I parked my car in front of a rusty pump and prepared for a quick fill-up. The rain battered against the roof of the car as I got out. The air was heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and gasoline. I grabbed my credit card and approached the gas pump. There was an eerie silence, broken only by the faint hum of electricity. I couldn't see anyone inside the station's convenience store, and the flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the cracked pavement. I inserted my card and began filling the tank. It was then that I noticed a group of people gathered under the dimly lit awning of the store. They were huddled together, whispering in hushed tones. A shiver ran down my spine as I felt their eyes on me. I tried to dismiss it as paranoia, but something about their presence felt deeply unsettling. As the gas pump clicked off, I hurriedly returned the nozzle to its holster and made my way toward the store, hoping to find some shelter from the rain. The door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit interior. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting eerie, intermittent shadows. The people inside the store looked up at me with hollow eyes, their faces devoid of expression. There were 5 of them, dressed in tattered clothing that seemed to belong to a different era. Their gaze followed my every move, and I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in some forgotten nightmare. I approached the counter, where an elderly man with weathered hands stood behind. His name tag read, Eugene. He looked up at me, his eyes as vacant as the others. I cleared my throat, my voice barely above a whisper. "Can I get out of the rain for a moment?" Eugene nodded slowly, his movements sluggish. He didn't say a word, but he gestured toward a small corner where a flickering overhead light offered some solace from the darkness outside. I took refuge in the corner, trying to shake off the unease that had settled in the pit of my stomach. I glanced out the window at the group of people who were still huddled under the awning, watching me intently. It was then that I noticed they were all holding something in their hands, something metallic and sharp. My heart raced as I realized the truth. These people weren't seeking shelter from the rain. They were waiting for something, or someone. And that someone appeared to be me. I made a quick decision to leave, despite the rain, and rushed back to my car. As I sped away from the gas station, I saw the group of eerie figures in my rearview mirror, their forms growing smaller with each passing moment. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped a nightmarish fate. To this day, I have no idea who those people were or what sinister purpose they had in mind. But one thing is certain, that desolate gas station in Cedarville, Ohio, held secrets I never wanted to uncover. Second story, by Laura Davis. Elmsworth, a small town in northern Michigan, was known for its picturesque landscapes and tranquil atmosphere. The town's peaceful reputation was about to be shattered on one fateful summer night. I was with my friends, Sarah, Mark, and Alex, as we drove aimlessly through the winding back roads of Elmsworth. We were bored, and the town's lack of entertainment had driven us to seek adventure elsewhere. As the night wore on, Sarah suggested that we visit the abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. It was rumored to be haunted, and she had always been fascinated by the paranormal. The factory stood as a relic of Elmsworth's industrial past. Its broken windows and crumbling facade gave it a foreboding presence against the backdrop of the moonlit night. We parked our car a safe distance away and ventured into the overgrown lot that surrounded the factory. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant chirping of crickets. The entrance to the factory was covered in graffiti, a testament to the countless adventurers who had come before us. Sarah led the way, her flashlight cutting through the darkness like a beacon. As we entered the factory, a cold breeze swept through the dilapidated corridors, sending a shiver down my spine. The place was a maze of rusted machinery and decaying infrastructure. Our footsteps echoed eerily, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. We explored the factory for what felt like hours, our nerves on edge as we encountered strange sights and sounds. It was as if the factory itself was alive, whispering secrets from the past. Mark stumbled upon a room filled with old photographs and newspaper clippings, all featuring the factory's workers from decades ago. They stared at us with haunting expressions, as if pleading for release from their forgotten memories. As we delved deeper into the factory's depths, the sense of unease intensified. We began to hear whispers, faint and indistinct, but undeniably present. It was as though the walls themselves were murmuring secrets we were not meant to hear. Sarah, undeterred by our growing unease, insisted we press on, determined to uncover the truth about the factory's dark history. It was when we reached the basement that things took a sinister turn. The air grew colder, and a palpable sense of dread hung in the air. We found ourselves in a chamber filled with flickering candles and strange symbols scrawled on the walls. In the center of the room lay a circle of salt, and within it, a weathered leather-bound book. Mark, ever the skeptic, picked up the book and began to read aloud from its pages. As he did, the candles flickered wildly, and a bone-chilling gust of wind swept through the room. It was as if the very essence of the factory had awakened, and it was not pleased with our intrusion. Suddenly, the ground beneath us began to tremble, and the walls seemed to close in around us. Panic set in as we realized we were trapped in the basement, with no way out. The factory had come to life, and it was determined to keep us within its decaying walls. We spent what felt like an eternity trapped in that nightmarish place, our sanity unraveling as we encountered terrifying apparitions and otherworldly phenomena. It was a living nightmare, and we were powerless to escape. When we finally emerged from the factory, the first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon. We were battered and bruised, our minds forever scarred by the horrors we had witnessed. Elmsworth had forever changed that night, and we could never look at our quiet town in the same way again. Third story, by Anonymous. My name doesn't matter, and neither does the date. All that matters is the story I'm about to tell. A story that still sends shivers down my spine whenever I close my eyes and remember that night in Pinecrest, Oregon. I had always been an avid hiker, and the allure of the pristine wilderness drew me to Pinecrest, a remote town nestled deep within the dense forests of Oregon. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, and nature reigned supreme. Little did I know that my adventure in Pinecrest would turn into a nightmarish ordeal. I set out on a solo hiking trip one sunny morning, with a backpack full of supplies and a trail map in hand. The forest was enchanting, with tall pines and thick undergrowth. The scent of damp earth and pine needles filled the air, and the soft rustling of leaves was the only sound that broke the silence. As I ventured deeper into the woods, I began to notice something odd. Faint whispers, like distant voices carried by the wind, echoed through the trees. At first, I dismissed them as a product of my overactive imagination. But as the day wore on, the whispers grew more distinct, more haunting. I tried to retrace my steps, but the forest seemed to shift and change around me. The once familiar trail had disappeared, replaced by a labyrinth of twisted trees and gnarled roots. Panic set in as I realized that I was lost, hopelessly lost in a forest that seemed to defy all sense of direction. Night fell, and the forest grew darker. The whispers became more insistent, as if they were beckoning me deeper into the wilderness. I followed their eerie siren call, stumbling through the underbrush, my heart pounding in my chest. It was then that I saw them. Shadows flitting among the trees, their forms indistinct and otherworldly. They whispered in a language I couldn't understand, their voices a cacophony of eerie tones. I tried to call out, to beg for help, but my voice seemed swallowed by the oppressive darkness. As I ventured further into the forest, the shadows closed in around me. I could feel their presence, their malevolence. They seemed to feed on my fear, growing stronger with each passing moment. Desperation overcame me, and I ran blindly through the woods, praying for a way out. I don't know how long I wandered, but eventually, I stumbled upon a small clearing bathed in moonlight. The shadows retreated, and the whispers faded into the night. I collapsed to the ground, exhausted and trembling, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. When I finally made my way back to Pinecrest, I was a changed person. I couldn't explain what had happened in those woods, and I doubted anyone would believe me. The forest of Pinecrest held secrets beyond imagination, and I had glimpsed something ancient and malevolent that night, something that would haunt me for the rest of my days. To this day, I can't look at a dense forest without hearing those haunting whispers and feeling the chill of that Pinecrest night. And I know, deep down, that some secrets are better left buried in the darkness. Thank you for joining us for the whole video. That video on the screen is one of my favorite. Check it out. If you've enjoyed these horror stories, show your support by hitting the subscribe button. Did this tale send chills down your spine? Let me know in the comments.